All right, guys, welcome to We Are Worship Wednesday, the November 11th edition. My name is Wisdom Moon, and today's co-host is Matt Perkins. Hey, Matt.
Hey, how are you all doing? Good afternoon. It's great to
And
be here.
yeah, thanks for joining me this week. Last week, you got to be the person answering questions. Today, you're going to help ask questions, so it'll be good stuff. And before we get started, if you're not familiar with weareworship.com, we actually give away a free song every week and a free hymn every month. So I want to just let you know what those songs are. In the US and Canada, the free song of the week is Walls by Gateway Worship, and it's their title track from their latest release. And the free hymn of the month is Come to the Water, featuring Paul Balash from the Blessed Assurance, the new hymns of Fanny Crosby. It's a great album, and Jon Egan actually wrote some songs on there too, I believe. And UK and the rest of the world, free song of the week is Holy Yours by Lou Fellingham, and free hymn of the month is My Soul Longs for Jesus by Planet Shakers. So be sure to check out the website. It's geotagged, so you don't have to worry about which side of the website you go to. It will take you to the right side automatically, unless you're some kind of IT geek and you prevent it, from the website knowing your location. So we encourage you to just take advantage of those free songs, and we have thousands of free chord charts on there as well that you can use and let your worship team know about it as well. And we have blogs and podcasts and all that good stuff. So today, our guest is Jon Egan from New Life Worship, and we're here to talk about the new instrumental album called Soak, and I've been soaking it in, and it's really good. I actually would drive to work with that on and just praying, so I've really enjoyed it. So, yeah, I'll let Matt kind of take it away from here.
Well, great. Well, I would echo what Wisdom had just said. Was man, it's a great project, and I had it on this morning. I was driving, running some errands, and just great to set that context of kind of getting focused on prayer. How did that project come about, and what led you to do an instrumental project like this?
Yeah, it was probably 6 or so years ago. I was just researching through the scriptures, through some different ideas of worship, and started stumbling on these moments where it was just music that would break into situations. Mainly, we'd like to talk about where Saul was deeply troubled, was kind of the words of the scripture. And he was deeply troubled, and they were looking for somebody of humble heart to come and play over Saul. So that whole idea, playing over someone, playing into a situation, I was really just into. I, like a lot of people, I like film scores, and I love instrumental music. But then to see what was going on with David playing his harp over Saul, and then the reaction. Okay, so Saul, it talks about relief. There was relief that came over Saul. He was deeply troubled. David plays over him. He's relieved. And actually evil would leave. Evil left Saul. So through the power of David, simple, humble David playing. And you see it in 2 Kings, Elisha, the prophet, they're calling on him. They want him to hear from God. I mean, he's the prophet. They need a word from God. And his first ask is for a musician, and musician comes to play. So it's these different moments that people are coming down the hill. Saul, earlier in the narrative of Saul, he's actually completely changed from a moment of music. And so we were playing a lot, playing here at home at church, obviously consistently. We were traveling around with the Desperation Band, and I think we were out somewhere at some event live with the Desperation Band, and halfway through we got into a moment of playing, and I just thought, let's just try this. So I just set it up. I was like, you know what, folks, we're going to do something. We're going to try something a little different. Worship really demands something of us. True worship is a sacrifice. True worship is us bringing something to the Lord costly, And we want to enter into a time now where you stop. You just stop. You be still. Don't do anything. Don't say anything. Don't sing anything. It's going to be hard not to do that. That's what it's a bit kind of what we're conditioned to do. And we are going to play over you. And then I described what we were going to do just because, we're not a jam. It's not going to be a jam band, Allman Brothers, Grateful Dead here moment. It's not Crosby, Stills, and Nash just kind of going on for 25 minutes. We're going to actually play over you. And our belief is that, I know these guys up here, these guys and these gals up here on stage with us, they're of humble heart. And we're going to intercede over you through music. And we believe, like Elisha, he called upon a musician to hear from God. We're calling upon the musicians to play over you in order for you to hear from God. And then some of you, like Saul, will find relief. Some of you, like Saul, will actually find relief from evil. So after quite a bit of describing it, we did it. And unrehearsed, spontaneous, we just allowed the team to prophesy essentially through music, through their instruments. And that started it. And we were kind of hooked from that moment. And everywhere we went, everywhere we traveled, we'd always do it. And then we started doing it at home on a Sunday morning. We'll take a few minutes here and we're going to play. And here's the deal. Here's the background. Here's the story. Here's why we're doing this. Here's the scriptural kind of, mandate here. And so I tell you, it's awakened some things in us and awakened some things even in people. It's really awakened some things in our musicians, a lot more authority. We often think it's the worship leader, right, that carries everything. And this has really changed the narrative quite a bit, that musicians really carry something unique as well, pastorally. It's taken the band from producers to pastors. And so we knew for years I wanted to do an album that did this. And of course there are instrumental albums that exist. I mean, we're not oblivious to that doing an instrumental album is not exactly the freshest, most original thing in the world. But we do feel like there's a freshness on this concept. We believe there's a freshness on what the Lord has been showing us. And we have 5-6 years of doing it, not only around the world, but at our own church, and seeing the power of it, testimonies that come in from people who are like, wow, how great is it to get permission from a worship leader to actually not sing and don't raise your hand. It's like the anti-cheerleader that we worship leaders too often feel like they have to be. But it's been a significant marker for us. And so we finally got to do it. We finally got to do the project.
But in just listening through on the project, and I know just in my family's journey, and we were talking just a little bit before this started, and I shared my story in last week's episode and time, and going through some real difficult times in our life, and then in this past July when my wife had passed away, and but going through those times, worship has always been the centering point. It kind of brings you back and focuses you, and even times in my wife was in the hospital of just running around the clock. We just have some worship music playing in the background, and I think in our society, especially in the church in America, sometimes we get nervous when it comes to silence, or when there's that time to just kind of center and just say, hey, we want to reflect and we want to focus on God. But if we're not singing, oh man, what's happening here?
Well, it's a kind of a producer's nightmare. If you're someone not producing an album, producing a service. I think that there's unfortunately a great value on keeping things moving, isn't there? And great value in making sure the space is filled with everything very intentional. And but it's what's funny about worship in general, just worship period, it's anything but clean. It's anything but perfect and produced. It's throughout Scripture, at least, it's messy. It's David carrying it on his back and sweating and dancing his clothes off. It's Mary breaking open vials of perfume and it being pretty obnoxious, extravagant act. And we have made it worship, specifically probably just Western world, it's just so too good, too easy. And I think we've sent the message to our congregations of you show up and we'll do it for you. We'll take care of everything for you. You come in, sit down. It's a performing arts center, not a participation center. And we'll take care of everything for you. So then the value becomes that. Next thing you know, you have to keep it moving. So something like Soak comes along and I think gives some permission. And that's what I've been doing. I've been talking to the worship leaders who are working this into their worship sets to say, hey, this is a great opportunity to start to take the trend maybe back a little bit back home to where it needs to be for worship, to say, hey, there's some scriptural, basis here that we want to do something. It's going to involve quiet. It's going to involve silence. It's going to involve no singing. It might even involve the whole congregation sitting down. God forbid that happens during worship. So it's given us a great teaching tool to even teach on congregational worship and how so. But anyway, you're right to echo what you're saying, Matt.
In going through that, I guess while we're kind of talking about that, if you talked about this process, it wasn't something that 1 week you decided, hey, let's do this project. That it was based on time that you had worked on this, and I know your church specifically has a great foundation and history in prayer. And so I'm sure that a lot of that has probably played into, there's a culture already there that's set for that. Do you feel that might be?
Sorry, say the last question again. You kind of cut out.
There's a culture of prayer that, that's history. Do you feel like that has helped you in that process of being, so if some church is always, they've got something going all the time. I guess probably where I'm getting at is, what would you suggest to a worship leader that says, hey, I want to try this. This is, this CD is ministered to me. And I would like to do that, in our church. What would you suggest for a worship pastor to do?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think our roots in prayer. Let me know, guys, if I'm cutting out at all. Sorry, because Matt, you were cutting out a bunch there. I want to make sure that this is working. In fact, I think you're
fine.
frozen. Are you guys getting me?
Yeah,
we're good.
Okay. Yes, it's all about building culture, and you can't just jar a church into another culture. I mean, you have to love your people through it, and I think one of the ways that if you don't have a culture of maybe prayer or things, I mean, I think there's a certain understanding that maybe our church has for things that are extended prayer, extended worship. We'll have nights for that and do that, and so it does give a bit of language, a bit of understanding of what we're trying to accomplish with Soak. But I would tell a worship leader who's trying to implement this live, and it would be a pretty drastic thing to do, I was just telling him to work it in slowly. One of the things that the album is a great resource for is just most churches end their services, and maybe there's a prayer team that comes forward to help agree with people on certain things. People that are going through different things. We use it in after services when people are getting prayer. We always put it on. I mean, I think that'd be a way to kind of introduce this idea of just the music, just instrumental. That's one way to kind of ease people into it. And then the key is kind of the story I told of just introducing this live, is you have to talk about why you're doing it. You can't just do something. Worship leaders are notoriously just guilty for this, but you can't just get lost in something and not explain to people what it is you're doing. You're not in your prayer closet here. You're in front of a lot of people, and you're called to lead them. You're called to steward that opportunity and that incredible privilege. So you have to explain to people what you're doing and why you're doing it. So say, hey, we're going to go into some time of instrumental music. We're going to play over you. What does that even mean? Play over you. Describe playing over people. And and we just believe you're going to hear from God. So, what do you mean hear from God? It's like, well, it's scriptural. Let's look to 2 Kings. Let's look to these moments in Scripture. You've got to pastor your people through your risks. And if you don't pastor your people through your risks, they're actually not risks. They're actually just just kind of blazing out there, on fire. Mock through with your hair on fire. Doesn't really help anybody. So the key is explanation, and I would ease it in. I wouldn't just jar your people into this new philosophy you just showed up with.
Well, and I think even one of the things that you just mentioned was, having a night, as your church has different nights of worship or nights of prayer, that, that might be a great vehicle to do that and just say, hey, we're gonna have this. This is a time for you to reflect in. One of our services on Sunday, we have kind of gone to a format where, there is built in at the end of that, there's time for communion, time for just reflection, time that they can journal,
Yeah.
That we're, in the process of, working that out and seeing how that system, and I see this as being, a great thing. One of our, Tim Ash, who is in as well and is dialed into this, he had just mentioned in the comments that he had just tried this last Sunday and had to explain it first, he says, but the pastor was teaching on it as well. So that's a great suggestion, Tim, and thanks for popping in with that.
Yeah, I would too. I would involve your leadership, your staff. If something that you arrange with your pastor, that's obviously great. But I would, one thing we did in one of our staff meetings, the whole entire church staff, we were able to talk about the vision of it. Also, when we were doing it live or when we were releasing this project, there was an understanding of what was going on. Instead of like, I don't know what they're up to. I don't know what they're doing. We can own this thing together. So that helps too.
So where, with this project and how that, now this is is this the first instrumental project that you guys have done like this?
Yeah, this is, and we're delighted in the response so far. So we have volume 2 already on the whiteboard kind of plans, and we're going to do another one.
That's awesome. Now, what are some other things that maybe not specific necessarily to this project, but in your church, in your times of worship, maybe personally, what are some things that God has been challenging you on in the area of worship, or it's even leadership in your team?
Yeah, we're trying to make sure that there's a deeper understanding about what worship is. And we have a school of worship where we have 50, 60 kids come through every year. So it's an amazing thing to see the perspective of what worship is through even just these guys as they come through, and they came up in a church environment that was teaching a certain thing. But I do think that one of the trends we're seeing that I'm passionate about reshaping is this phenomenon that worship is about a 3-song set, fills the time in a service, keep it happy, keep it this or keep it that. Not a lot of originality. There's a lot of echoing of, where most churches are singing songs that are echoing a movement somewhere else, or not a lot of kind of worship leaders with a voice to speak into the life of the church. And I'm very fortunate to have a great relationship with my senior pastor, Brady Boyd, and to have a permission from him because he's my authority, but to have permission from him to speak into the life of the church, to take temperature of the life of the church and to speak into that. Eugene Peterson, that's how he defines pastoring, is paying attention and then calling attention. And I just see this kind of generation of worship leaders coming up that were never taught how to pay attention. So they don't know how to call attention to things. What they were taught to do and what the value that's been placed on them is just sing good and play good, and keep it as distractionless as possible. And here's a pretty decent salary if you can just do those few things. So what ends up happening is we have a movement of talented karaoke singers moving up through the ranks of church life and ministry life, where you have people flooding the doors every week who are looking for a nugget of truth or looking for that prophetic whisper from the Lord to help them with situations, real situations. Matt, you could preach that better than anybody. And so what we are working very hard to do here at New Life is to increase the depth of our worship leaders, of our musicians, to increase their understanding of the word, to increase their understanding of leadership, to increase their doctrine, their ability to speak into situations, their ability to see and declare, to pay attention and call attention. And so we place a very, very high value on raising up character and not just talent. So, I mean, talent is wonderful, but it's not really going to get us into the marathon that is ministry.
Right.
So we are really paying attention to that and working hard to do that. I would encourage any worship leader to really dig into what it is you're doing. Any worship leader should be able to describe why do you lead worship at all? Any worship leader should be able to describe why do you lead worship at your church? Why do you lead it that way? And we really need to get a little bit stronger with our convictions about what we're doing and why we're doing it. So we're heading, taking things in the right direction. And so consequently, out of our effort to do that and grow and increase in those things, we've learned a lot about what worship really is. And I've kind of touched on it, but just the sacrifice that worship really is, the bringing something that really is costly, something, and we live in a very obviously it's not to sound cliche, but we live in a very entertainment driven culture, and we do church mostly on weekends, right? And weekends notoriously, of course, the weekends are set up for your enjoyment. Weekends are set up for your rest. So it's more natural for people to show up in the world we live in, the culture we're in, to show up to church every week to say, okay, you guys take care of it for me. And if you take care of it for me really well, I'm going to go to your church. And so then we have churches competing with one another for everyone's attention by trying to make everything sound better, look better, feel better. And we're trying to preach the more unpopular message. It was like, well, I hate to say it, but if you come here, you're going to be really asked to bring something. Because worship is heavy and living for the Lord is weighty, and his yoke is easy and his burden is light, and there is great reward for that. But it's a big ask, and we're not ashamed to kind of go in that direction. But it's something I think also will help the trend move a little bit.
That's awesome. Now, could you give us and those who are tuned in, and then those who are going to be listening as well on podcast and different formats that this will be on. Can you give maybe a snapshot of your journey in leading worship, maybe how you got to New Life and how that all came about? And, we see the product now and a lot of people that would be looking at, different either songs that you have written and, Desperation Band thing. There's all of those that people see, but can you give us a snapshot of how that journey started for you?
Yeah, I was a drummer at first, and I just thought that would be the coolest thing to play drums and tour the world in a rock and roll band and the whole thing, until the Lord just really got a hold of my heart. And I grew up in New Jersey. And we were doing these services on the weekends, And the Lord he was just showing up in unique ways, and our church just rallied around what God wanted to do. And there was this culture of, hey, what does the Lord want to do? And whatever he wants to do, let's be a part of it. And there was an innocence and this beauty to it. And I was so drawn to it. And I was just, 17, 18 years old. And I just totally got hooked on Jesus. And it was in those pivotal years where you're kind of going to choose one path or the other. And I thought, wow, Jesus and music, that sounds really good to me. I went to a Christian college, and I was just kind of thinking, this is the only thing I want to do with my life, is figure out how to use music to glorify the Lord. And I just felt like I was late to the game to be a worship leader, because that happened throughout in college. I felt like the Lord was saying it's time to be a voice, time to come off of the drums and sing into situations. And I had no idea if I could sing, and turned out I really couldn't for a while. I learned a lot more later. But I started learning guitar in my dorm room by myself. I didn't really even want to tell anybody that I feel like I'm supposed to be a worship leader, because I just felt like they would say, "But what are you talking about? You're a drummer. Can you even play guitar? Can you sing? Can you do any of that?" And I was like, I don't know. I'm finding out by myself alone, in secret, blasting Delirious CDs and just listening to Martin Smith and going, I want to do that. I want to speak into situations like he does. I want to write lyrics like he does, because they seem to kind of pierce through things a little differently in a way that I've heard. And I was just so turned on to it. So I decided just to go for it, head first, hook, line, and sinker. And I was incredibly destroyed at first by all the critics and all the people who told me all the things that were true but difficult to hear about, the skill that wasn't there yet, the talent that wasn't there yet, the different things that I needed to grow in. All those things were true, and some people were kind about it, but a lot of people weren't. But there was something, there's that passage in Jeremiah that just says, Jeremiah 20, he's being so honest with God. This was me like 12 years ago, just saying, and Jeremiah says, I feel deceived by you, God. You've just deceived me. You've asked me to do something that's just ridiculous, and you've deceived me. You've lied to me. You've set me up. And then he even goes as far as to say, I wish I was never born. I just wish I wasn't even living. But then in the middle of that prayer, he goes, but there's this thing in my gut it's like a fire that's in my bones that I must continue. I must do it. That was me 12 years ago, because I couldn't handle. I thought, when you're called by God, surely everything, the sea parts, right? Everything, the red carpet goes out, the waves go up, and you just walk through, and it's really amazing. And it was not amazing. It was really actually painful and hurtful even, and confusing. But there was something that I knew the Lord was asking me to carry. And so I did it. It led me to New Life. I've been in New Life for 14 years, and I never thought I'd be planted at one place that long. And I'm delighted to say that this is a special community, and we have quite a story of our own at New Life of incredible trials and shame and fear. And it only solidified worship to me is through those times of pain and through those times of incredible weakness, which, Matt, I'm sure, again, you could preach better than anybody right now, but we were able to sing through our stuff and worship through our stuff. And it only sealed the deal about my conviction about worship and writing songs and being an original voice to declare the kingdom.
Well, that's one of the things that I really appreciate about this new project, Soak, is just there is time that when you go through trials, when you go through difficulties and things, that's all you have is God. And so many times we'll shrink back from it and say, well, this happened to me, so God must be mad, so I'm going to go do something else. And then when things level out, I'll come back to church. Yeah. That's, it's not about the church. It's not about it's your relationship with God and worshiping him. And, man, you hit a point. That's all you have. And, I would recommend anybody who is listening to this, or if you're tuned in, make sure you pick up this project, and it will be a blessing to you. Use it during your time as a background music. If you're, reading, if you're praying, I was checking out and saw some testimonies of some people that had just messaged you on Twitter, or some retweets of somebody that was having problems sleeping. Do you have some other testimonies?
It's that's been the most energizing of this whole thing, is to hear stories like that. So we heard from a yoga instructor, and you can say all you want about yoga. I'm not saying anything about yoga, but she's a believer. She's a yoga instructor, and she's always praying for ways to minister to her clients, when she does these classes. So she's using the project, and her whole thing is, I love it. I'm just trying to give people a cup of cold water, and if they ask about the source, I'll tell them. And so we heard from her. We've heard from multiple public school teachers who are able to use music as kids are walking in, and they've done that for a while, but now they're using this as their way of involving worship music in their schools. Yes, my favorite probably is this. Well, real quick, you mentioned the one of the guy. He hasn't slept. He can't sleep, and he laid it on his bed at 9 o'clock at night, in his, the clothes that he was wearing all day, and he's just sitting there thinking, how am I going to sleep? I just cannot do this. And he was so tired and so discouraged. He put soak on, and he's like, wow, I like this. It's the first time he heard it. I like the music a lot. And then he said, next thing you know, it was 7 a.m. He opened his eyes. And we heard from a mom who's very concerned about her daughter, who's dealing with a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear. And they're like, let's try putting this music on in your room. She said, okay. And she had her first really beautiful night's sleep in a very long time. But my favorite was from a story of a teenager who was hurt in a car accident, meant to be at the hospital for multiple weeks because of a spinal issue, and serious this could be. So one of our students here sent this family the album. This family, they're not believers, or I don't know if they're interested or disinterested in Christianity. I have no idea, but they put the album on in the room. They just played it on repeat. So throughout a couple of days, the doctors kept on noting, wow, this recovery is insanely fast. And we're starting to get a little we're starting to be a little bit dumbfounded by how fast this recovery is being. And the mom of this family just looks at the doctor and says, this is going to sound crazy, but I think it has something to do with this music.
Wow.
And the doctor said, well, hey, whatever. It's just amazing. Anyway, that family got to go home from the hospital incredibly early. So, you know what? Here's the thing. For us, we're delighted to hear these stories. Obviously, God's in control. We don't, it's not like, hey, buy this album, we guarantee this. It's not that. It's just a matter of, we took a chance. We want to tap into some sacred ideas from Scripture. If Saul could be relieved of evil because someone of a decently humble heart, and we know David wasn't we know he was far from perfect. But if someone of a decently humble heart comes in and plays, and Saul is relieved of evil, what if we tried? And I'm sure others have tried. I'm sure others have done the same thing. It's beautiful. Let's all try. I don't know, but we've seen some cool things happen from the project. So the stories keep coming in. So they're great. They're really fun. I specifically love the stories of people with fear and anxiety. And finding relief, we did hear recently from a woman who pulled over the side of the road. I feel like as songwriters, that's the story we all long for. We all long to release an album. For some reason, I've talked to so many songwriters, and they all like, I so long to release an album or release a song that people driving home from work after a long day, it's like everyone's got the same story for some reason. They pull over crying because the Lord is just in the car with them. They find just relief from that. And so I've talked to so many worship leaders who have that same desire, and we heard that exact story about this album from a woman of our that works at our church. And she's just weeping, pulled over, and she just sensed the Holy Spirit just saying, "There are things in you that are dead that I've been wanting to get your attention on those things." To come alive again and breathe life into those things.
That's awesome.
Just wet. Yeah.
Wisdom, should we open it up for some questions? Are there some questions maybe some people have? They can. What's the best way that they can do that, Wisdom?
So if you want to ask and join my video, you can click on the button that says call in, or you can type it in the chat. So either way, you can submit your questions and interact with us. And while we're waiting for that, I want to let you know we're going to give away a copy of the Soak album, the CD, to 2 of you. So hang tight. At the end, we'll announce how you can do that. So yeah, feel free to jump in and ask some questions.
Also, while we have that, I just want to make, if somebody's listening, and this is kind of coming out of my experience of when my wife was going through, weekly was in the doctor's office, going through some chemo and different things. Those are times when people are they're sitting there for a number of hours. A friend of ours who was going through some treatment had said, "Man, I'm looking for music that I can play that's just instrumental, that I can have in the background." And because I couldn't find anything, I went. She was just buying some stuff at the store, some different new age music or whatever that was just background. And I would suggest, if you know someone that may be going through some type of treatment, ongoing things that they're, just need that time that they can put some headphones on and just be at peace in the middle of some of those circumstances, I would recommend, pick it up for a friend, and you're gonna bless them in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. It's awesome. I agree.
You're here.
I agree.
I actually have it in a Spotify playlist too, and sometimes I'll just put it on repeat, and it's a great opportunity to just kind of reflect or pray with it. Sometimes you just need that music that has no words, And
yeah, we use it a lot at church. We've used it a lot. Our video guys have used it a lot for their background.
It's almost some of it actually sounds like movie, like cinematic. Like
yes,
music.
The guys and the team that has worked on that album, we all share a very deep affinity for film scores.
Cool.
So we had to involve some of that.
Yeah. Jon, can you maybe share with us how people can connect with you on social media or with New Life Worship?
We have all that stuff, the social stuff. The at New Life Worship is the at New Life Worship. That's our church, New Life Church, and there's a worship ministry. There's a bunch of us worship leaders, kind of a team. Jared Anderson, Glenn Pack, and myself, Corey Asbury. We have a beautiful and crazy ragtag group of guys who lead, and gals. So that's at New Life Worship. And then the Desperation Band's kind of the youth expression. That's been going 12 years, 13 years strong. That's been quite the ride. And even though I am 36 years old, I still will travel some and with the Desperation Band, do some of that. Because that's mostly youth events. And then I'm Jon C. Egan, JonCegan. At Jon C. Egan is my Twitter and my Instagram.
Cool.
And if you join the Instagram, you will see some house renovations that I am currently involved in, which is a side passion of mine is these house projects and building my stairs right now. Ripped out my stairs, building new stairs. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's like a therapy thing.
Yeah, that would not be therapy for me.
No. Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's I don't know. Just get alone and work on some stuff. Yeah. But that's it. That's it. We got other guys here that you can connect to, but you'll find them all on New Life Worship. And newlifeworship.com. You can see a bunch of our team, and we also release like We do. We took a break for the summer, and then we're just launching it up again. But we do a weekly resource that we offer on Mondays. It's free, blog or something, video or something.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
We've
Well,
got a
I
lot
don't
to
see
say.
any questions.
So we're just saying. Is there any questions?
I
don't
think
know how
Matt
this
did
works.
such a great job. He answered everybody's, he somehow incorporated everybody's questions. So
That's fine. That's fine.
yeah, there was somebody earlier who was trying to jump on, but I think they got tired of waiting or something.
Oh, cool.
Well,
So
Jon,
we're
thanks.
gonna. What's that?
I was just telling Jon, thanks for just what you're doing and what your church is doing and worship ministry. It's great, and it's a great resource for all of us. So thank you.
Thanks, Matt. It's great to meet you. And thanks for having. It was great to talk about the Lord, talk about worship. That's easy.